People crave saviors, heroes who will rise up to defend the common man from threats beyond their abilities. In real life, that tends not to happen as we don't got people running around with magic powers, as far as I know. If any of ye are hiding it from me and I find out, I will be writing you a strongly worded letter that shall contain very harsh words, so speak up now. However, in a world like Arknights, saviors can exist. Exceptionally powerful individuals who can wield their immense power to alter the world around them. While not individually capable of affecting things on the scale of entire countries, unless you're a priestess, people still crowd around such people in the hopes of a better life. And Abnormal Spectrum tells the story of some of these saviors. From the inhospitable land of Ursus will I recount to you the events surrounding these saviors, be they figures of myth or those who overthrew oppression. Regardless, Ursus has a way of beating them down. All is not well in the frozen land of Ursus, and considering what a hellhole it normally is, if I have to mention it's gotten worse, something horrible must have happened. Reforms that provide nothing but superficial treatment simply cover the wound without treating the underlying infection. It is that infection that drives Ursus to the brink. No, it's not Aripathy that has caused this, but the blatant disregard for the common man within Ursus. The infected, as always, are an easy scapegoat for their self-proclaimed betters to abuse, which is why revolution has, for the second time in this story, come for Ursus. The fires of reunion have been reduced to embers, but the spark of the oppressed seek to ignite them into a raging inferno once more. The Walkers' Revolt has come for Ursus, and Rhodes Island won't allow the lives of the infected to be erased like the countless times they were before. Unfortunately for the infected, it is not just Ursus that they must worry about. The Yurodstvo is one of the ghosts that haunt the land of Ursus. They are a holy figure in the Ursine fate who, at least on paper, stands on the same level as the Emperor. The common people believe that the Yurodstvo possesses immense wisdom and see them as a savior sent by Ursus itself to enlighten the masses. In truth, Yurodstvo is a demon. Well, not quite. The original Yurodstvo was a sage who was corrupted by the demons of the north. Through some mysterious ritual, likely emerging from Sami itself, they somehow retained their sanity despite being corrupted. Since then, there has always been a Yurodstvo in Ursus, with only one individual allowed to be the Yurodstvo and a new Yurodstvo chosen after the death of the previous one. This cemented them into the consciousness of all of Ursus. All Yurodstvo possess psychic arts, which are amplified by their demonic powers. They can see beyond mortal limits and can even bind collapsals into human beings. Very important, as the emperors of Ursus have used this to create their blades. Their nature as a centerpiece of Ursus's fate has resulted in many saviors of the common people to be attributed the name of Yurodstvo. For example, many years ago in the wilderness of Ursus, only death waited for the infected. One of the swords of Ursus, an emperor's blade, did what they do best and hunted down unarmed innocents. However, one of the people present was able to influence the blade using her arts and trap him in an illusion. Although it only proved to be child's play for the Emperor's blade to escape this deception, upon realizing that this woman possessed the same type of arts as the Yurodstvo, they would invite her to become the new one, to forge new blades for the Emperor. With the blade restraining themselves so as not to bring Ursus a ruined Yurodstvo, the woman would be able to force the blade into a deep sleep. The woman urges the people she saved to abandon Ursus, but they refuse. After all, Ursus has sent a Yurodstvo to save them. They cling to their savior, their hero. I was going to save this for later, but you can see the screen. And if you can't, this story is about one of Rhodes Island's very own elite operators, Mantra. And yes, she will be very relevant later. However, modern Ursus, for the first time in centuries, is without a Yurodstvo. 2 years before the events of Abnormal Spectrum, in the autumn of 1099, the Tsar of Ursus called for a trial of the latest Yurodstvo. As such, he was sentenced to death by the State Council as he was deemed to have gone mad. This Yurodstvo, Gabrielus, spent 7 days defending himself before the council, but in the end, his sentence was not overturned. In his final speech, he forgave those who accused him, ending his speech with a prophecy announcing the end of Ursus due to its arrogance and alienation of the people. Even if it meant his death, he would not stop proclaiming the truth to all of Ursus. And so, the last Yurodstvo was burned on the Emperor's direct orders. Following the destruction of Rhodes Island's land ship after Priestess's little outing, our beloved war criminals are rebuilding their new headquarters, also generously provided by siege Arknights. The Doctor, Amia, Monster, Closure, and Warfarin are meeting to discuss the revival of our lost green cat, Calcit. This process will require a sarcophagus. With the one in Rhodes Island buried within Originium, the only known location of a walking sarcophagus is Ursus. Despite Calcit's best efforts, she was unable to find it after the Ursus military claimed Chernobog following that whole debacle. With the last scientist who worked on the project now dead, their final lead is Kesnia, who worked as an assistant on the project. Her current location is the far northern territory of Ursus in a research lab in Bresk, alongside its mining district. Warfarin reminds them that Rhodes Island cannot afford to take on any extra risk at this time and urges caution as they have no credible information on the current Ursus. Radian, a former Ursus interrogator, now Rhodes Island elite operator, volunteers to head to Ursus first and scout out the area for any possible dangers. So with Amia handling business aboard Rhodes Island, the Doctor and Monster taking care of religious strife in Laterano and Radian in Ursus, things seem to be going well. For a few months at least. Then Rhodes Island lose contact with Radian. With our last known location being in the far northern mining district, Rhodes Island gathers up a team of operators consisting of the Doctor, Amia, Monster, Mantra, Elysium, and some randoms to go looking for their missing scouting team. What could possibly go wrong? A lot, it turns out, but not because of Rhodes Island's team. As I said before, Ursus is in a sticky situation right now. 5 days before the arrival of the team in the mining district, there was an incident, and as a result, Bresk had been placed under martial law. 2 days later, Rhodes Island arrived at Bresk itself. Their entry, although initially clean, quickly descended into a manhunt as the Ursus guards attempted to arrest them for entering the industrial zone. The law had been changed after they reached Bresk, and now foreigners were banned from the district. The guards don't accept the excuse of "that's a bullshit law," and an Ursus royal guard is forced to intervene before Rhodes Island is arrested. Taking Rhodes Island to an isolated building, Aloysius introduces herself. She knows that they used fake identities to enter Bresk, and she intends to make a partnership with them as the mission she has been sent here for requires Originium experts. Both need to enter the mining district, and so a partnership would be beneficial. Aloysius assumes they are here for the same reason as her, to investigate the abnormal infected that Warfarin wrote a paper on after the events of Chapter 15, but this is not why Rhodes Island is there, so she unintentionally revealed the existence of abnormal infected in Ursus. Regardless, this exchange of information is enough to get Rhodes Island to agree to her partnership. And thanks to the negotiations of Aloysius, Rhodes Island is allowed to meet with Grand Duchess Elizabeth, the governor of Bresk. It was her who placed the area under martial law, and as such, if Rhodes Island is to enter the mining district, they will require her permission. And I must say, look at that design. Setting that aside for now though, it is just the Doctor that is allowed to meet with her. All I'm saying is Calcit would have started this in about 5 minutes. Well, 5 minutes if you compress her monologues. The Duchess greets them warmly and welcomes Rhodes Island to Bresk. She is impressed with Aloysius' admiration of Rhodes Island, but will not allow them to enter the mining district. Thankfully, with the Doctor's conviction and Aloysius' help, the Duchess allows them to enter the district peacefully. Despite appearing kind and agreeable, Aloysius warns the Doctor about her. If she is allowing them to enter the district, it must be for a politically advantageous reason. Wasting no time, Rhodes Island heads for the mining district and find their initial path is impassable. Dominion, a trademark signature of the Emperor's blade, blocks their path. Is this why the Duchess shut down the area? Well, Rhodes Island has no time to waste questioning things now, and head around the corruption and towards the mining district itself. Flashing back to before their arrival, the infected in the area drive off the patrol units sent to hunt them down. Rankin is a local miner and has become a hero for standing up to the cruelty of Ursus. His group of infected are 100 strong, and they have been attempting to leave the mining district but keep getting intercepted by patrol units. One of the miners, Vitochki, helps her grandmother Nadia get settled before heading off to meet with Rankin. Rankin at that time had a captured patrol unit member at his mercy, and that man reveals that all the miners have a tracking chip implanted into them. This explains why the patrol unit keeps finding them so easily. The patrol unit says that the chips are bombs that will detonate when they get too far from their allocated area. The man clearly thinks telling Rankin this is enough to save his life, but no. Vitochki tries to stop him, but Rankin kills the man regardless of our protests. Rankin tells Vitochki to gather up the people. They shall remove these ships regardless of whether the patrol units were lying or not. Rankin asks Radian and her team to assist him in performing this procedure. After inspecting Rankin, Radian detects the frequency needed to prevent the chips from detonating and uses her ults to neutralize it while removing it from all the miners. After the mass surgeries to help the miners, Nikto, a former city boy turned infected, meets with Rankin. He tells Rankin that the miners are reaching their limit, but Rankin reassures him that everything will be okay. Without the chips, the miners are finally free. He tells Nikto that Reunion has founded a settlement in the Casimirs' Ursus border, and their dreams of a life free from Ursus will be achieved once they reach there. They just need some supplies and to get the patrol units off their back. And with the chips that transmit their location, they can set a trap for them. After all, they already struck down that Emperor's blade. Defeating some patrol units wouldn't be impossible. Radian recognizes that this infected group needs their help and decides to accompany them south. Before she leaves, she sets up some clues for Rhodes Island to follow. 2 days after leaving the mining district, the miners would put their plan into action. 2 patrol units track down the miners heading south. However, as we know, this is a trap, and it is the patrol unit's time to be war-crimed. As Rhodes Island advances towards the mining district, they encounter a group of miners battling with a patrol unit. The patrol unit is losing badly, and Rhodes Island intervenes before they are killed. Aloysius tells them that killing the unit is a bad idea, and provides them with a letter that will grant them access to a shelter in Bresk. When asked why they are fleeing the mining district, they tell them that the Originium veins have dried up. Hearing that sets off warning alarms for Rhodes Island, and they head for the Research Institute, finding it empty. The gang split up, with Amia and Aloysius heading for the morgue, the Doctor and Monster heading for the upper floors, and Mantra and her chud son Elysium exploring the middle floors. After parting from Aloysius, Mantra informs the Doctor about the location of a life signal in the lab. In the morgue, Amia and Aloysius discover that all the coffins are in use. Not a single corpse is infected, but each one is twisted beyond recognition. Issues in the North are worse than simple infected oppression. Ursus has been carrying out human experimentation. Monster and the Doctor discover the last survivor, Ksenia, arriving just in time to stop her from burning herself to death. While letting her recover, they discover a note that informs them that they had discovered a new substance called Oka that was able to kill an Emperor's blade. Ksenia mistakes Monster for Calcet, although she realizes that she's a different person after venting to her. She reveals to them that she saw Radian leaving the mining district with the miners after they killed the Emperor's blade. With that bit of information in hand, the team regroup and decide to pursue the group of miners. Doctor and Monster stay behind to look after Ksenia as she is too weak to travel, and they still wish to investigate the mine. So Amia takes the rest of Rhodes Island and Aloysius and heads out after the miners. Amia's team passes through the mining district again and discovers the clue Radian left behind for them. A chip removed from one of the miners. Aloysius notices the traces of a fight and reveals a mass grave of patrol unit forces. Extremely necessary to mention this, Mantra lifts Aloysius out of this grave by wrapping her tail around her. And I think I can speak for all of us when I say it should have been me. Now even more determined to find the miners, they prepare to follow Radian's trail. Mantra takes a minute to pull Amia aside before this and tells her of the Yurodstvo, and how she is worried something similar to her has happened here. That the miners have proclaimed their savior, a Yurodstvo. The miners meanwhile have commandeered a truck column, hoping to acquire some of those supplies they are in desperate need of. Unfortunately, all that is inside these trucks are the corpses of Ursus's victims. Rankin is enraged by this and intends to kill the driver that survived the attack. However, as it turns out, Holly, one of the miners in Rankin's group, is the man's father. Rankin refuses to kill or release the man and leaves his fate in Holly's hands. Enraged by the sight of his son aiding such atrocities, the man beats him to death with his bare hands. Holly, despite not truly believing that creature was his son, is still left in a despondent state. Nikto tries to comfort him, but to no avail. The rest of the miners, meanwhile, celebrate their victory over Ursus, and Nikto heads off to talk to Rankin. To describe him as upset about what he made Holly do is a bit of an understatement, but he still refuses to interrupt him immediately as he was playing the accordion for the miners. Fun bionic fact, I too know how to play the accordion, although it has been a few years since I last did regularly. Seeing everyone happy lifts Nikto's spirit just a bit, and he even dances with one of the minor baddies. It is only when the merriment dies down that he has time to speak with Rankin. Moving away from the crowd, Nikto criticizes the man for putting Harley in that position. It was, to say the least, not a very nice thing to do. Rankin, the hero, makes no excuses. He was angry and wanted the guilty to be punished. Those who are transported in those trucks suffered a far worse fate. Even with that being true, Nikto won't allow Rankin to justify himself. With his piece said, Nikto leaves Rankin to his thoughts. Rankin thinks back on all that life has forced on him. Pain, salvation, death. Nadia appears before him. She has seen how killing the Emperor's blade has condemned him. He now carries the burden of life and death. Rankin chose this, so she can offer no help. She simply leaves her blessing with him and leaves him to his thoughts. With Monster's treatment, Ksenia is able to recover. As one of the sarcophagus researchers, the doctor asks her if she knows where it currently is. Unfortunately, she still thinks it's in Chernobog. She was recently invited to the Ursus capital, Grifferberg, so that is a potential clue to its current location. With that bit of questioning at an end, they ask her about Oka. She tells them how, when the Originium vein dried up, it was a mysterious black liquid that remained behind. The Grand Duchess ordered human trials immediately and expected results within a week. Our beloved overworked scientist voiced meaningless critiques like ethics and basic human decency, and as such was excluded from partaking in the trials. So she is blameless for all the depraved shit that has happened here. One day, Radian appeared before her and told Ksenia that she needed to escape. All those who are volunteers for these trials were actually forced to be there, and the miners were marching on the place to get justice for their disappearances. Vytochki had realized that people were going missing, and Rankin had infiltrated the place and recovered some of the bodies, so they were out for blood. Radian just came to warn Ksenia. Ksenia tells the Doctor and Monster that all those who came into contact with Oka died within 2 weeks. The Doctor comes to the obvious conclusion that they must acquire a sample for themselves. The trio head for the mine, and Ksenia asks about Calcid as she wants to see her again. Monster sets the priestess-sized dancer aside for now to focus on the task at hand, simply reassuring Ksenia that she will meet Calcid again. Reaching the mines where Oka was found, Ksenia tells them that the infected that came into contact with the liquid was seemingly cured of their oripity symptoms. Well, not cured exactly, but stabilized. It removed the pain that comes with having oripity, but did not stop its ability to spread in the body. Ursus, of course, wanted to weaponize it, which led to human experiments we saw earlier. Within the mine lies a river of Oka. After lying still for long enough, it becomes stabilized and turns into a universal solvent. Collecting a sample, Monster immediately recognizes it for what it is: liquid originium. While it still retains the information of originium, it can no longer be harnessed as energy. Being drained originium is what allows Oka to neutralize oripity. As a result of not having originium in their body, non-infected people die upon coming into contact with it. It is clear from this what has become of the originium vein. Within the next 3 months, originium production will drop to only 30% of its current output. Regardless of social factors, without a new power source, Ursus will collapse. Another unquestionable Priestess W. Venturing further into the mine, the group find a waterfall of Oka. A frequency emits from here, one that when translated says the same thing in countless different languages. Debate. An unmistakable invitation left behind by Priestess. As they attempt to leave the mine, they are stopped by an embodiment of the current Ursus, a mangler beast mutated by originium. It rages in pain, and Monster is forced to put it out of its misery. Rushing back to the lab, they discover that the army has begun bombing the mining district. Realizing that if the army already knows the mine has gone dry, then they cannot allow that news to spread outside of Ursus. As such, they will wipe out all the miners who know. In the lab, the Doctor sends a message to Amia informing her of the plans of the army, right as they begin bombing the lab. The last thing the Doctor hears before blacking out is the sound of an engine and a familiar voice. The miners continue their journey south, but find themselves short of supplies again. With Radian barely keeping the medical side of things going, Rankin heads off with a small group to find more supplies. Vytochki follows them to a nearby village where Rankin is negotiating with the locals for food. Vytochki and the others assume he's been trapped when it takes a while and end up assaulting the kind villagers in order to rescue their leader. Despite that mishap, the villagers offer Rankin and his group of miners some of the empty houses in the village to save them from the elements for one night. And you know what they say, no good deed goes unpunished. Thinking back on the day he struck down the Emperor's blade, Rankin feels a sense of unease. The blade cut a bloody swath through the miners before Rankin stood before him. Only when the blade saw Nadia and was distracted for a moment was Rankin able to stab him through the neck, killing the Emperor's blade. In his mind, he was surrounded by all the comrades he had lost, and they pushed him forward. However, even with the blade dead, his battle was far from over. Harley, now beyond the point of reason, sets the village ablaze. After all, what use are homes when Ursus has abandoned the infected? Rankin wakes to the chaos and finds Vytochki searching for Nadia, who's gone missing in the Inferno. Leaving Nikto in charge of evacuation, Rankin and Vytochki search for Nadia. They find her within a burning building. She sits there, untouched by the flames, and no ash falls upon her clothes. A miracle, or a sign of something much worse. For the second time in Arknights' main story, burning and snow signal a turning point in the infected rebellion within Ursus. With the village destroyed, the residents demand justice for this atrocity. Rankin initially offers his own life to appease the villagers, but only the death of the man responsible will sate their anger. So Rankin executes Harley personally. Following this, Rankin makes a declaration to the infected miners. He will no longer force them to follow him south. They must make their own choice now. Stay in Ursus or follow him on the march to freedom. Vytochki watches those around her choose to follow their hero south and intends to do the same before Radian stops her. She knows the child wants to live and tells her that she will no longer be following Rankin. Accepting this, Vytochki seeks comfort in the lap of Nadia and cries at her parting with those she loves. Nadia knows that it is her love that makes her hurt and promises to share in her burden. Amiya and her group would arrive at the site of this incident shortly afterwards. The group searches the area for survivors and runs into Vytochki. Realizing they are from the same company as Radian, she leads them to where her group was staying and tells them about what happened in the village. Radian is happy to see her friends and informs them of everything Rankin has been up to for the past week. Aloysius warns them that as Rankin intends to pass by Grifferberg, it is almost certain that they will be labeled as traitors and wiped out by the army. As such, Aloysius offers to use her influence to place all the infected here under the protection of the Imperial Army in order to get them out of here alive. Radian does not trust her, but Amiya convinces her that she is on their side. As such, Radian agrees to get the miners to agree to Aloysius' offer, but finds them to be unresponsive. Except for Vytochki, all of them are in a deep sleep. With Radian rendered helpless by this mental attack, only Mantra can keep her wits. She recognizes the handiwork of the Yurodstvo immediately. Instructing Amiya to remain outside of its sphere of influence, Mantra enters the building to confront this demon of Ursus. Meeting up with Radian, Mantra gets a grasp of the situation. Sending Radian outside to safety, Mantra investigates the woman known as Nadia. Radian tells Amiya and Aloysius about the situation, and Aloysius finds the whole situation to be impossible. She personally saw the last Yurodstvo die. Coming face to face with Nadia confirms Mantra's suspicions. The Yurodstvo has been amongst the group from the start. It helped them strike down the Emperor's blade and has supported them through this journey. Mantra realizes that the Yurodstvo has become like the demons, a being bound to this earth by those who remember her. So, in order to defeat this monster, she must wake the miners from its influence, starting with the one who truly grounds it, Vytochki. Rankin's group meanwhile arrives at the edge of Lake Neva. Across it lays Grifferberg, and beyond that lies the border they are looking for. An outpost stands between them and freedom. Hoping to avoid it, Rankin leads everyone underground into a hidden mining tunnel. Inside, his group discovered another group that had been trapped underground. They reveal to them that the tunnel past the outpost collapsed years ago, but hearing Rankin's name ignites hope in the hearts of those present. He's a hero. He can lead the miners to freedom. Within the interconnected mine tunnel, the young and old have lived and died. Children who have never seen the sun have been born here. Seeing this, Rankin rallies those present. He intends to not just lead them south, but to true freedom. They will overcome that outpost and then march on Grifferberg. Nikto tries to talk them out of it, but one voice cannot oppose those who have been abandoned by Ursus. The guards at the outpost are caught completely unaware. The infected have come for them, armed with what little they can pull together. Hundreds march to their death. Nikto flees the battlefield as soon as the fighting starts. Rankin, however, leads the charge, and for his trouble, receives a devastating head wound. Over half of them died in the assault, but they have won. Across Ursus, the Grand Duchess comments on how she enjoys Bresk this time of year. There's no difference between day and night. The Imperial Marshal of Ursus's Fourth Army patiently awaits her response. The army has mobilized. It simply requires her cooperation. They simply intend to put down a rebellion. A heavy-handed response is not what she wants, but her silence is the only answer the army needs. The victorious miners light their torches above the outpost. They have claimed that they have won. They have struck back against Ursus. But what awaits them is not the sight of victory, nor the sight of a defeated Ursus. Before them waits the might of the Fourth Army. And the shelling begins. Receiving the doctor's message, time is running out for Amia's team. The army intends to bury everyone who knows the truth, and they are in the line of fire. Aloysius suggests cutting their losses and retreating, but Amia refuses to abandon the infected. As a show of good faith, Aloysius reveals why she sought out Rhodes Island. The chairman of Ursus's council, Wit, sent her to find Calcit. She tells Amia that she has vehicles located south of Lake Neva. Using them, they can outrun the army and carry the infected to safety, but she can only give them another hour at most. Amia agrees to her terms, and the rest is left up to Mantra. Inside, Vituchki tries to convince the illusion of her grandmother to leave with her, although Mantra sees through the illusion of the Yurodstvo. Speaking directly with the girl's mind while blocking out the demon's influence, Mantra questions whether Nadia really is her grandmother. With the protection from the Yurodstvo's arts, Vituchki is able to see through the illusion built for her. She remembers how Ursus killed her parents, how she was forced to watch them die. She heard their final screams, how only her grandmother was left, how, when she was sent home, what awaited her was not a loving grandmother, but Red. Her grandmother was dead. What awaited her was her grandmother's shadow, a shadow of Ursus, Nadia. With Vituchki rejecting her, Yurodstvo takes her true form. Mantra takes this moment to create a barrier between it and the miners. Recognizing Mantra's forcing her out, Yurodstvo takes a different approach. She shows images of Mantra's past, from Sargon to Ursus. Yurodstvo wants Mantra to become her, like she was before. However, unlike this ghost, Mantra feels no desire to control others. She just wants the people to be free. So Yurodstvo alters its attack. Rhodes Island, Mantra's source of strength, but also her weakness. It causes a pause in Mantra's arts. In that moment of hesitation, the Yurodstvo breaks through her protection. The miners want to accept the altered world of the Yurodstvo. Recognizing she cannot do this alone, Mantra calls upon Elysium to help her connect to all the minds of the miners. Using her arts, she reveals to them the truth of Nadia. Vituchki now sees that they cannot wait for heroes to save them. They must do that themselves. Taking up her shield, she rings it with her pickaxe. The ringing of her shield awakening the other miners to reality. Yurodstvo looks down on her granddaughter, but Vituchki turns away from her. Having been rejected by its followers, the Yurodstvo disappears. Mantra is upset that she couldn't kill it, but she learns from Radian that time is run out. The Ursus military has begun purging the mining districts of all life. Vituchki doesn't want the lives of these people to be erased so easily, and Mantra agrees with her. Still exhausted from her fight with Yurodstvo, Mantra calls upon Elysium and Radian to aid her in preventing Ursus's erasure of life. Using their arts together allows Mantra to broadcast her and Vituchki's voice to all of Ursus. Before the army even has a chance to rewrite history, the truth of their massacre spreads to all corners of the land. As Rhodes Island leads the infected to the vehicles Aloysius has prepared, the Fourth Army begins shelling them. With Radiant and Aloysius getting to the vehicles with the first group, Amia, Elysium, Mantra, and Vituchki lead the remaining infected through the forest around the lake. However, the army has already set up a perimeter around the forest, so they are forced onto the frozen ice. With Mantra's broadcast alerting Grifferberg to the army's actions, the Fourth Army is likely to continue its march onto the capital in order to enforce its desired outcome. Leaving Aloysius with the vehicles, Radian heads back to help Amia with the evacuation. Despite the risks, Amia leads the infected across the ice. As the army shells the ice, one of the infected miners lights his torch and begins walking in the opposite direction. He marches towards the soldiers as a target to save his companions. More and more miners join him, including Vatushki. Aloysius' vehicles are full. No rescue awaits them, so this is how they will oppose Ursus. Feeling the miners' anger ignites a fire in Amiya. Channeling their anger, Amiya once more manifests the Black Sword. From the tip of Yingzhou flows a blue flame, covering the ice and shielding the infected from the army's shells. With the army's advance being halted, a truck is able to drive onto the lake. Crownslayer, who had rescued Monster, Ksenia, and the Doctor from the lab, brought them here to assist in the evacuation. As they make their escape, the Fourth Army receives an urgent request from Grifferberg. They are ordered to cease fire immediately. With no other choice, the army allows the infected to escape. Having safely arrived in Grifferberg, Aloysius is debriefed by Wit about the Fornord incident. The surviving infected have been placed under the protection of the State Council and will be used in their investigation into Grand Duchess Elizabeth. Aloysius believes the Duchess was a rather passive party in all this, simply allowing the events to play out with slight nudges so things hopefully fall in a way that benefits her. Because of that, she can pass off the blame to the Fourth Army, who, thanks to their mission south, has been able to set up outside of the capital. Aloysius is also concerned with the Yurodstvo running around, but Wit tells her that he will handle that investigation personally. Thanks to Rhodes Island, the Fourth Army failed to cover up their crimes, and because of that, the infected have helped Grifferberg's position. They have exposed the corruption within the army and the failures in the reform policies of Ursus. Wit knows Ursus must change if it hopes to survive, and for that they must leverage Rhodes Island to strengthen Ursus, specifically Calcit, so that they may use the power of the sarcophagus. She keeps it to herself, but Aloysius revealed this to Rhodes Island, and in turn they informed her of Calcit's current status and their need for the sarcophagus to revive her. If she plays her cards right, not only will she secure help from Rhodes Island, but will also help them achieve their own goals. A win-win scenario. In a not-so-win-win scenario, Ursus's many armies are at each other's throats again. Across Ursus, its many armies mobilize for their own motives. The Fourth Army continues its illegal presence on the border of the capital's governorate. The Third Army of abusing Reunion fame is mobilized for its own purposes and has set its sights on the capital. The First Army has begun conscripting students from universities without authorization, resulting in them needing to put down countless protests. With all this happening, Grifferberg mobilizes the Second and Seventh Armies to take control of the situation. Nothing has happened yet, but the powder keg is ready to go off. That is where our main story ends, but there is a small bit more to tell. At the Casimiro's border, Reunion has made a new home. It's not much, but Tallulah has created a place that can support the infected with the help of Nine and the others. It's been a while since Chen visited, and with no one else delivering messages, Reunion doesn't know much about the outside world. Despite that, the legend of this Reunion refuge continues to spread across Terra. Either way, they are reaching the point where they can start sending people out into the world so that they can rescue more of the oppressed infected. And a reason to do just that arrives conveniently right after Tallulah and Nine were discussing it. Survivors of Rankin's group bringing word of the massacre they suffered. Those less fortunate and still in Ursus are rounded up by the army and are to be executed upon Lake Angara. However, right as that would happen, a sunken nomadic city would break through the ice as it suddenly rose up, with soldiers and miners alike being swallowed by the ice. In another camp, Koshlina, the current host of the Deathless Black Snake, aids miners by teaching them. She's making moves and giving knowledge to those most likely to rebel against Ursus. Additionally, for miners lucky enough to escape from the soldiers, they may run into a savior of the infected, Kyoda. In case you forgot this was Act 3, she's here to remind you that Priestess's goals still move forward. She can't give the infected food and water or even purge their exhaustion, but she can take away their pain. She cures the miners' oropathy, and thus her followers grow. And that, my friends, is Abnormal Spectrum, another fantastic entry into Arknights' third main story act, taking a vastly different approach to dissociative recombination and tackling a much more personal, small-scale story, at least when compared to the cosmic existential threat of Priestess in that story chapter. After all, this is laying the groundworks for a rebellion against Ursus and the collapse of one of Terra's mightiest nations. So there are a lot of saviors seen throughout this event, in case you forgot how I opened this video. Rankin, the Yurodstvo, Amiya, Reunion, Mantra, and Hirda. But notice how none of these saviors are Ursus itself. And even then, not all of these saviors have the best of intentions in mind. I think Rankin's a pretty interesting character, but for the most part you probably could have replaced him with any revolutionary hero and gotten the same job done. He's not exactly a standout character for me, but I appreciate what he brought to the story. The Yurodstvo, meanwhile, is fascinating in comparison. This demon, this entity that has haunted Ursus for centuries, and we get to see it here. It's always lingered in the background, a folktale to tell other Ursine children to let them know that someone somewhere is looking after the common man. Unfortunately, in reality, this demon does not have your best intentions in mind. Yes, it promises you salvation. Yes, it will help you with your burdens. Yes, it will help you take down the Emperor's blade. But at the end of the day, you exist to sustain it, not the other way around. And I think it was really well contrasted with someone who could have become a Rhodes. Mantra, aside from being potentially the most attractive Rhodes Island elite operator, was a fantastic character, and also a great little nuanced look into a savior. She once had that role thrust onto her, and she rejected it. However, her path eventually led her to Rhodes Island, or as it would have been at the time, Babel. Here, she would be influenced by Teresa, the Doctor, and of course Calcit, and eventually she would see the leader of Rhodes Island come into her own as a savior. And due to her seeing how people would treat the Yurodstvo as a mythical godlike being, she did not want to be a savior. However, when the time came, she of course would step up and protect the innocent. Not because of this high-minded goal of the Yurodstvo, but because it was simply the right thing to do. Just like our little bunny rabbit, Amia. Amia has always been portrayed as the savior of the infected for the entire game. Not just that, as the inheritor of Babel's will, the inheritor of Teresa's will, she of course wants to protect all of Terra itself. As such, when we see her get truly angry when the infected are being shelled, you really feel that as a breaking point for her. This isn't the first time she's used her power to protect the innocent from armies, but this time felt more personal. When she defended the Sarkaz, it was almost like she was carrying out the will of Teresa. However, this time it was purely on her own desire not to see more suffering brought to the world. And if this is the type of character work we're getting from Amia this early into Act 3, I can only imagine what she's going to look like by the time she's taking on Priestess directly in a few chapters. I also did really appreciate how Reunion is sticking around in the background. If you have read the main story, you know how important Reunion is to the overall theme of the infected in this game. Once more are we back in Ursus, looking at how rebellion has come for the infected once more. Last time we saw how an eldritch entity corrupted the meaning of Reunion and used it to further their own political games. However, this time, Tallulah has no such weakness, and should she choose to, she may step back into the forefront as the leader of Reunion and the leader of the Ursus infected in general. There is no way that Ursus comes out of this act without being vastly different. It is likely to receive a complete reformation of its government, and I would not be surprised if in the end, it is Reunion leading that charge. From everything they have told us about the current Emperor of Ursus, they are a nice and kind person. However, they have failed to meaningfully reform the system. That is because their source of power is built into the intrinsic structure of the system. And it will take someone like Tallulah, who's willing to burn it all down to save others, to bring this system into a more positive direction. And while speaking of saviors, we should of course mention the savior that never showed up for the common man, Ursus. In fact, it was acting as the exact opposite of a savior. Human experimentation is vile. I think we can all agree on that, especially under the circumstances that was shown to us in this event. And the callous disregard for human life was an atrocity without measure. If you haven't read it, at the beginning of one of the story segments, they literally go through all the mining districts in the note and just say, eliminated. Yes, they were systematically wiping out miners as they moved towards Rhodes Island. And no doubt, if it was not for a true savior like Amia, they would have wiped out the last survivors of the Far Note. So you might be able to tell, I am super excited to see where this plotline goes. It is currently shaping up to be one of, if not the most compelling story Arknights has ever told. And not to lay on the glaze too thick, but if you told me that chapter 16 was in your top 3 Arknights main story chapters, I would not say that's crazy. This video has taken long enough to get out, so let's get this wrapped up. And yes, before any rumors spread, the reason is simple. Every time Mantra was on screen, I got stun locked for 25 seconds. And when they showed CGs of her, I got stun locked for 55 seconds. Add more older women to the game, Hippogriff, and I will give you more money. Shout out to the many wonderful members of the factory. Y'all are the oppressive government that crushes all resistance to my beautiful infected miners. Y'all be good people, and I will see you in the next one.